Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gayle Carson. Welcome to Living Regret Free, a program that shows you how to live a better and more joyful life. As an added bonus, I invite you to listen to an introduction to my Mindset Matters program, which ties into this so well. Go to www.sobmindset.com. It's free, and I know you will enjoy it. If you'd like to contact me personally, drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com or go to my website, www.spunkyoldbroad.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. My guest today is Sindy Warren. Sindy is a certified yoga and meditation teacher and a lifelong student of the practice. She's passionate about sharing the wisdom and beauty of the practice of yoga with others. In her new book, Radiate, Using the Practice of Yoga to Cultivate Your Inner Shine, she makes a persuasive case for the continued relevance of the philosophical underpinnings of yoga for the modern yogi and even simply the yoga curious. She lives in Shaker Heights, Ohio, where she teaches yoga and meditation, has a legal consulting business, and is raising a family. Welcome, Sindy.
Thank you so much, Gayle. It's an honor to be here with you.
Well, you know something, as I was reading a little bit about you and so forth, I thought to myself, no wonder she's practicing yoga if she is a legal consultant and a graduate of law school. So yes. I'm sure the other balances you out quite a bit. So why don't you start by telling us when you first started practicing yoga and why it appeals to you?
Absolutely. I started practicing yoga about 15 or 16 years ago. I've always been a very avid exerciser. In fact, back in the 80s and early 90s, I taught step aerobics. And I kept hearing about what a great workout yoga was. And that was what drew me to my first class. I had no idea that yoga was more than physical exercise, and came to learn that over the next few years and became very passionate about the larger context of what yoga is all about.
That is so interesting because I am a product of step aerobics, and I still work out every single day for an hour and a half to 2 hours. Wow. And but I don't do step aerobics anymore because of knees and things like that. But I've never been a great practitioner of yoga. It has just not appealed to me or been easy for me either. I think that what's easy for some is not easy for others. But you then became a yoga teacher. So why did you decide that you wanted to teach yoga?
Well, I really had been a voracious student of the practice. I got very into the physical practice. Like you, I continue to do other things too. I also enjoy running. And it was really about a decade plus into my practice, and a friend suggested to me, why don't you do a teacher training? And I thought, I have this legal consulting business. I'm raising a family. I don't have time to be a yoga teacher, but this would be a good way for me to deepen my own practice. So that's what initially drew me to my first teacher training.
That's interesting. So you really didn't go into it with the idea that you were going to teach. You went into it really for your own knowledge and edification.
Exactly. Wow. I'm telling my husband, about halfway through the teacher training program, my initial one, I said, maybe I'll end up teaching once a week. And he said, not more? I said, not more. I don't have time. Well, now I juggle two careers, teaching yoga and the legal consulting, and teach just about every day of my life.
Wow. Well, now you wrote this book. Now, did I pronounce it correctly? Is it Radiate or Radiate?
It's Radiate. It's a play on.
Oh, Radiate. Got it. Okay.
The number 8 is in the title as a reference to the 8-part or 8-limb path of yoga philosophy that I break down in the book.
So who should really read the book? And what is the main message of the book?
The main message of the book is that yoga is a systematic way of approaching all areas of your life, not just physical yoga practice. Meditation is a big part of the practice, but it's not even just about meditation. Yoga is an ancient philosophy going back thousands of years. And I think for modern yoga practitioners, much of the historical and philosophical context of it has been lost. The West has, in some ways, just turned it into another form of exercise. And really, it's so much more than that. So I wrote the book for students of the practice, but even people who might never have any interest in unrolling a yoga mat or taking a downward facing dog, as just a way to make your life and yourself happier, more fulfilled, more loving, more kind, those sorts of things.
Wow. So would you say that, I mean, when you tell people you're a yoga teacher, and do people think of it as it's a certain kind of person? Because sometimes people think it's an exclusive club. I mean, I will tell you, the yoga people I know, they come in, they take the class after me. And my class is the core and the strength and all of that. And they come in after me, and they're so nice, and they're so quiet, and they're so gentle, and we're just bouncing off the walls. So what do you think about that?
That is really funny. Just hardwiring, I'm way more like you and the people in your class, bouncing off the walls. A lot of energy. I think there are so many ways yoga has been pigeonholed. One is the way you just described, sort of this characterization of yogis is just always zen and chill and go with the flow. Another sort of byproduct of the westernization of the practice is that it's all about postural prowess and accomplishment and achievement. And the fancier the pose, the more steeped in yoga one is. And I don't think any of those characterizations capture what yoga was meant to be, or in my mind, what it really is.
So, would you say so what do you say yoga is? Let's find your definition.
Yoga is a way of life that helps you get more familiar with the deepest part of yourself, while helping you take that deep part of yourself out into the world to enhance all of your relationships.
I like that. I like that.
Okay.
So you talk then about, you said the radiate, the 8 limbs of the yoga path. What are they? What are they? I mean, can you tell us briefly?
Absolutely. The first of the 8 limbs is called, I use Sanskrit a little bit throughout the book. I'll just interrupt myself to give this caveat. Sanskrit is not necessary for anyone interested in yoga. I always provide the English translation, but it is sort of a nod in my mind to the tradition and to the teachers that have come before us modern teachers. So the first of the 8 limbs is called the yamas, Y-A-M-A-S, and it's a group of 5 ethical practices that help us relate to the world around us. For example, the first one is nonviolence, in Sanskrit, ahimsa. And it's really about how you relate to the world around you, those in your life. The next, and Gayle, interrupt me if I'm going too fast.
No, this is fine.
Okay, great. The second limb is called niyamas, and that is a grouping of 5 ethical practices that we engage in to enhance our relationship with ourself. So one of them is called self-study, or svadhyaya in Sanskrit. And it's a kind of a disciplined approach to understanding your mental chatter, the natural wanderings of your mind, the nature of your inner dialogue. The idea being that once you're more familiar with what's going on in your internal dialogue, you can make it more productive, healthy, kind, etc. So those first 2 limbs are all about kind of ethics in the larger context. And I think most modern yoga practitioners don't know that that's a big part of this big thing I'm calling yoga. The next limb is called asana, which is the physical practice. So that's what we think of, probably, most of us, when we hear the word yoga. Yoga studio, people unrolling a sticky mat, taking a downward facing dog, moving through some sort of physical practice. That's asana. And it's so interesting to me that it's only one of the 8 limbs, where I think so many modern practitioners view it as the whole kit and caboodle, if you will. The next limb number 4, is breath work, pranayama in Sanskrit. And in a yoga class, the teacher will instruct the students to match their movements to their breath. But pranayama also stands on its own as a way to calm the nervous system, to regulate emotions. And so breath work is also a big part of the practice. Those are the first 4 that have almost a little bit more of an external focus, how we relate to ourselves in conjunction with the external world, for example. And then the last 4 really bring us more to an inward journey, which is a really important part of yoga. So the 5th limb is called Pratyahara, and it translates as sensory withdrawal, which means removing yourself from the stimulus of the external world and turning inward. So we might think of the yogis in the old days withdrawing into a cave for months or even years at a time, literally taking themselves out of the external world. Modern yogis, we find more accessible ways to tap into that limb. The next limb is called dharana, which means concentration. This is the beginning stage of meditation, where we bring our mind's eye to one point of focus and practice staying with that one pointed focus. So it's kind of the opposite or the antidote to multitasking. Next is dhyana, which literally translates as meditation. And meditation is just a huge part of the yoga tradition and philosophy. And there are so many definitions for meditation, but I would define it as a process of drawing the attention inward, focusing on an internal focal point, and then feeling into the connection between yourself and the world around you. And that leads us right to our final limb called samadhi, which translates as enlightenment. And there are so many different ways to think of spiritual enlightenment, many of which are completely unattainable for most of us here. But I like to think of enlightenment in a more accessible way as something that we can get little glimpses of throughout our lives if we practice the other of the limbs, where we really feel into and tap into that connection between us and our creator, or we can think of it as the source or divine consciousness, or any way you like to conceive of our connection.
Well, when you describe these 8 limbs, now I'm sure that most yoga teachers are aware of this, but I don't think I have ever come in contact with someone who practices yoga, takes a yoga class, that they ever talk about any of these. I mean, is this something that people study as part of yoga? I mean, I go to a yoga studio, I take a yoga class, and somewhere along the line of me going to all these classes, this is going to come up, because I don't ever remember hearing any of this.
It's such an interesting observation. Yoga teachers have to go through a minimum certification of 200 hours. And my understanding is that every 200 hour will at least cover the 8 limbs in some cursory form. So yoga teachers should at least know there's this concept of the 8 limbs. Now, whether they're able to really study it, incorporate it into their lives, and then translate it to their students is a whole nother story. And I think your observation is quite revealing in that most practitioners and even teachers don't know much about these 8 limbs. So, I'm not a fan of trying to hit people over the head with philosophy or say you need to know this or you have to study this. Instead, when I'm teaching a yoga class, I try and sprinkle in little bits of the philosophy without even necessarily labeling it for the students, almost more as an inspirational message of this is the larger point of what we're doing on our mats right now, so you can take it into your lives. but I think most teachers probably don't do even that.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what I would ask you is a couple questions. What if someone has no interest in going to a yoga studio or engaging in the physical part of the practice? Will he or she still, or can, really, I guess is a big thing, still practice yoga?
Absolutely. The trick will be finding the right group of students and the right teacher. So finding your community. Most yoga studios will offer something that's not physical practice related, whether it's a meditation class or a discussion group. I've hosted a book club at the yoga studio where I work for a number of years as a way to just talk about yoga, think about yoga without actually doing any of the physical stuff. So yeah, there are teachers out there that want to do this. And because yoga has become so ubiquitous, I think there are more of us than might be readily apparent. So it may take a little digging on the part of the would-be yogi, but we're out there.
And I guess that's where you could have this discussion about the 8 limbs.
Exactly.
Interesting. Now, you bring up a couple of other points, and that is yoga philosophy described sometimes as a religion?
I don't think of yoga philosophy as a religion. I think of it more as a secular humanistic tradition. You can be a devout Catholic, Jew, Muslim, and practice yoga. You can be a committed atheist or agnostic and practice yoga. You actually don't have to believe in any kind of deity or divine consciousness or even source. Those are things you may see sprinkles of in the philosophy, but it's really more of a practical way of living than it is a dogmatic religious belief.
So a lot of the philosophy that you describe seems to talk about non-attachment as an ideal or as a way out of suffering. Do you really think we shouldn't be attached to our loved ones or to the things that bring us joy and meaning in the world? I mean, I would think that yoga would bring you joy and meaning.
And it does. I love the question because I think it captures a big misconception about what attachment and non-attachment means. So in yoga philosophy, it is said that being overly attached, perhaps that's a more accessible way to understand the concept of attachment, is to say overly attached brings suffering. So if there's something that you really want in your life, a new car, for example, you get the car. You think you'll be happy when you have the car. You get the car, you're happy. And then life goes on, and soon there's something else you need, you're attached to, you're overly attached to, thinking that will be the next source of your happiness. So yoga asks us to unhook a little bit from the external things that we think we need or want to be happy, and to find that within. Now, when it comes to our relationships with our loved ones, I think the conversation gets a little more interesting and perhaps subtle. Of course, we should love with abandon and be of service to those in our lives. It's when we get too hooked in that we make the relationship more about our selfish desire than actually about serving the relationship or the other person. So that's what I mean when I say unhook a little bit. It's not detach like don't care. It's more like detach so that you can show up fully without selfish desire involved in the equation, if that makes sense.
So do you think that modern yoga as we know it has been watered down too much of the spirituality of the practice?
I do. It's been watered down to the point where most modern practitioners and even many teachers coming out of teacher trainings don't know, haven't studied, and don't try and incorporate the larger philosophy into our lives. So I do think there's a watering down that's gone too far. I mean, when any sort of spiritual tradition transcends cultural lines, it's going to shift and morph a little bit as yoga has moved east to west. And that's okay. I think changing tradition to fit modern times makes sense, but losing tradition makes me a little bit sad. So for students who go to their yoga mat 5, 6, even 7 times a week and don't have any kind of inner awareness or meditation practice, or don't think about how they can be more loving and kind in the world, that makes me sad, because I feel like those people are missing the main point, the main fruits of the practice of yoga. They may be getting flexible and strong and supple, but they're missing the real point.
Interesting. So when we talk about these, the external restraints, the yamas, the internal restraints, the niyamas, which one would you focus on, and why?
If I had to pick one, it would be ahimsa, which means nonviolence. It's the very first of the ethical restraints for a reason. It really underpins all of the yoga philosophy. So any of the other practices will always take a backseat to ahimsa, nonviolence, non-harming. It's sort of like the Hippocratic oath for yogis. So what it means is not just that you don't go hit people, kill people, kick dogs, etc. It's a deeper analysis of, do I hurt others with my words? Do I hurt others with my thoughts? Do I hurt myself with my thoughts? And so even something as broad and perhaps vague seeming as ahimsa, nonviolence, can be turned into something that goes very deep within us. So as I mentioned when I was talking about the niyamas, so much of the yoga journey is an inward one, with the premise being that we love ourselves first, not to be arrogant, not to have big heads, but so that we can go out into the world and love others. And ahimsa recognizes this by asking us to work on our inner dialogue as well as what we direct to others in our world.
Well, I want people to be able to get a copy of your book, Radiate, because first of all, I think you approach the whole practice of yoga in a very unique way. And I think that you write in a very down-to-earth, common sense way. So where can people go to get your book, and how can people reach you?
Thank you for asking. The book is on Amazon. It's under my name, Sindy Warren, Radiate.
And by the way, that's not a normal Sindy Warren. That is Sindy with an S, right?
Correct. Sindy.
Right. And so Sindy Warren, Sindy Warren. Okay, yes. Go ahead.
So Amazon's where to get the book. And then if anyone wanted to get in touch with me, you can go to my website, which is yoga8book.com. Or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram under Sindy Warren. And I always love chatting with people who want to talk about yoga.
So what would you say is the greatest gift of the practice in your own life?
Yoga has made me less reactive, less dependent on external stimulus to fill me up, more able to be present in the moment with whoever or whatever is right in front of me, and softer in my inner dialogue and my relationship with myself.
That's so important. Yeah, that is so important. Especially in the profession that you're in, in legal consulting, I would think as calm as you can be and as appreciative as you can be is key. So remember, the book is called Radiate, but it's spelled Radi and then the letter 8, using the practice of yoga to cultivate your inner shine. So when you look for it, Radi and the letter 8. So and if you want to, find out more about Sindy, you can go to her Facebook page. You can find her on Instagram. The important thing is, I think if you take a look at this, you're going to be very interested in how she approaches this whole practice of yoga. So I want to thank you, Sindy. It's been very delightful and different talking with you today. I hope our audience really got a lot out of it. I know they did. And I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Gayle. I love the work you're doing, and it really was an honor to be here with you.
Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. I choose my guests carefully, so if you have someone you'd like me to interview, please drop me a line at gaylecarson13@gmail.com. In the meantime, check out my intro program, Mindset Matters, at www.sobmindset.com. See you next week.